Today, I'm joined by two incredible veterans from Acumentrics, has been a trusted market leader in critical power solutions used in military and commercial applications since 1994. I think my guests today have an amazing background, amazing story that we've touched on, and I think it's just kind of a legendary moment for us because we get an opportunity to hear their stories and their perspectives about their transition and how they were able to navigate the civilian world and the challenges that they faced during those times. And then they're also going to talk a little bit about their employer, Acumentrics, a little bit. So I'm joined by Mike Bonin and Matt Kosakowski. Did I pronounce that okay, Matt?
Perfect.
Okay. So they're going to tell you a little bit about their career journeys. I guess, Mike, we'll start with you. Could you tell us a little bit about your career journey, your transition, what you're doing at Acumentrics, and then we'll pass it over to Matt.
Sure. Basically, I joined the Navy back in 1987, so that tells you how old I am. And basically, my position in the Navy was electronic warfare technician, which is basically a long title that said when you were underway on a ship, what my job would be is I basically sat at a big radar detector and I would identify threats, figure out what they were, and then apply countermeasures to try and either make them miss or not know who we were. Was in the Navy for 3 years active. Then I followed up with that, and I was 3 years reserves on the East Coast in both Newport and in Groton, Connecticut. Once I completed my Navy service, basically one of the things that the military did in my journey was I wasn't a very good high school student. I wasn't someone with a lot of direction. I was kind of an immature kid. So going into the Navy kind of helped me find my path of what I was and come up with a plan of what I was going to do. So being a bad high school student, I had to play catch up when I got out, and I came back to Rhode Island, where I actually live now and have for most of my life other than my military time. And went to community college and got myself straightened out, and then ended up graduating from Bryant University with a business degree. And from there, funny enough, my first job was at a company called American Power Conversion, which does uninterruptible power supplies, much like Acumentrics. And I spent quite a bit of time there, and then a couple other positions, mostly in a customer-facing role, where my natural tendency seems to be dealing with customers and dealing with processes. So that has led me through the 20-something years before I ended up at Acumentrics. Acumentrics has been a great transition for me, being a company that both deals in power, like my experience had been, and deals with the military, which it kind of became a natural fit. And I could tell when I went in for my interview that they kind of felt the same way.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I feel like our paths are kind of divine. You know, it kind of happens before it actually happens. So it's cool that we've all been able to meet today through Acumentrics and your awesome path. Thanks, Mike. And Matt, what about you?
Yeah, thanks. So my path is similar, but with some differences. So what I did was went off to college, did ROTC. So really needed, because my family background, a scholarship to pay for college. So I was fortunate enough to get that. Did that, and when I graduated, it was Air Force ROTC. When I graduated, got a pilot slot. So went to pilot training down in Del Rio, Texas, little Del Rio, Texas. Did that for about a year. Then went off and learned how to fly C-130s, which are propeller-driven cargo airplane, and really did that around the world. So The C-130 isn't a glamorous fighter jet. It's kind of a very utilitarian airplane, but it's a great airplane in that you basically take stuff wherever it needs to go, whether it's, anywhere around the world, a dirt strip, at night, on ice, etc. So did that for several years, really enjoyed it, did it active duty. And then from there, maybe similar to Mike, I transitioned to the Air National Guard, actually in Rhode Island, and continued to fly C-130s there for a few years. And again, really enjoyed it, really enjoyed all aspects of it. And so as far as what the military did, so I was extremely shy all through school. Like I was kind of the quiet student, didn't talk a lot, et cetera, which surprises people now when they meet me. But, I think what the military did was a couple of things. It kind of brought me out of my shell because, when you fly, you have to be able to lead. You have to be able to communicate with people, to plan your missions, et cetera. So it really helped bring that out and develop me there, which is, just been a good skill to have through life, whether it's in the professional world or your personal life. So that was probably the biggest benefit. And in addition to that, meeting different types of people. You have to work with all different kinds of people. You meet people from all backgrounds, et cetera. And you all have to work together to accomplish the mission. So that's a great thing that doesn't necessarily happen when you grow up in a small town like I did. So anyways, from there, went off and went to grad school up in Boston and entered the civilian world. So most of my employment has been in tech companies that serve the warfighter or someone else in a critical role. I just find something that's really what I migrate towards, as opposed to maybe consumer products or things like that. So I worked in a type of semiconductor manufacturing. I did a lot of headsets and communications gear, again, oriented towards, military folks in airplanes and in ground vehicles, that sort of thing. And of course, here at Acumentrics, I'm actually here. Obviously, this company is highly based on supporting the military, but we're also moving into critical commercial applications, where some critical processes in place, whether it's controlling, water valves or rail infrastructure, or providing telemedicine to people in remote areas of Africa and India. So it's still the same basic theme of helping critical missions get accomplished. Things that, if they don't happen, really have an impact on someone's safety or, that kind of thing. That's really fulfilling to me. As far as Acumentrics is concerned, I think like Mike said, Acumentrics is very supportive of veterans in general. I think the company understands the value veterans bring, which is maybe something we can talk about later about, how veteran experience, how that can be presented to help you, because not all companies recognize the benefits being a veteran, the things you learn brings. But Acumentrics definitely does. And they make an active effort to reach out to veterans, to recognize the veterans that work there and value, what they bring to the table.
Awesome. That's awesome. Thanks, Matt. And I think both of you have really cool stories, and I think it would be good to start with you, Mike, in terms of, I really, really appreciate the authenticity that you brought to the conversation when you mentioned, hey, I wasn't great in high school, but look at me now, kind of thing, because I feel like there's so many professionals that may not know what their path is going to look like once they get out of the military. And sometimes that kind of keeps them in, and keeps them, it's a fearful state that you're put in when you're making that transition. And then also when you get in, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm committing my life to this thing that I have no idea what's going to happen. Could you talk a little bit about that transition and how you were able to essentially navigate the space and go into school, and your thought process during this time? Could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I think a lot of what it is like you say, you're an 18-year-old out of high school that's just kind of going all over the place and not really any idea which direction you want to go into. There's a lot of time where you have to basically be introspective and try and understand, well, who do I want to be? And do I want to be a career Navy man? If not, well, what other direction am I going to go? And I think having that time, and it doesn't hurt being at sea in a dark room on watch sometimes, because you get a lot of time to think, because there's not always a lot of ships that you're looking for. But yeah, you get a lot of time to be introspective and figure out what you want to do. And basically what I had determined is, yes, I appreciated the Navy when I was in it, but I also felt that I wanted a different path. I didn't always want to travel. I always wanted to have a family. It really set my path going, okay, now the next step is college. I have a vague, even then I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I had a vague idea what I wanted to do. But I think everybody kind of goes through that path in their lives where you make a decision and you go down it and try and make decisions of where you're going to be. But you know what? That path changes often. And yeah, I got a business degree in finance, and I've dealt with customer service and processes most of my career, because I learned the skills through both the military and through my college education to be able to put me on different paths. But at the same time, to have the confidence and knowledge to go forward and be able to actually travel that path.
That's beautiful. Yeah, and I feel like there's so many people that are in that space right now, or they've gone through it. And I think it's helpful to hear your perspective, because it's really valuable. It gives you kind of that strength to move forward. And Matt, when it comes to you in your transition, where was your head at? I always call the GI Bill this golden ticket of opportunity, because it's almost like the Willy Wonka chocolate factory thing, because it's like you get an opportunity to really pay your way to essentially change your life. And so you went to grad school right after ROTC, I think you mentioned. Could you talk about like how you were feeling during that transition and where you were in your mind at that time?
Yeah, sure. So, I found just in general through life, you follow a path that maybe you don't think of before, like the path you thought for yourself earlier on just changes for a bunch of reasons, circumstances, what you learn to enjoy, what you learn about life and careers, etc. So yeah, my thought was I was going to, I saw the flying movies growing up. So that was in my mind that I was going to do that. And that was something I really wanted to accomplish. So I did that. And similarly, what I found in the military was I really enjoyed the camaraderie, the flying part, that sort of thing, being with a close group of people around the world. That was really fulfilling, exciting, and fun. But I learned pretty quickly, yeah, I'm probably not cut out to be like a general or something like that. And just what my interest was and what I wanted to get out of the military. So I really didn't have a plan, but I was like, well, a lot of my friends are doing grad school, so I'll try that too. And it was really more, okay, let's see how I like doing that, and then we'll see what happens from there. And just going back, about where your path takes us. So I majored in physics in college, and I can tell you I've never done one physics equation since I graduated. But I think it was good because it exposed me to different people, to different things, and I think you really got to do that to figure out where you want to go in life. And, so after grad school, I was exposed to people that worked in different kinds of companies. And I never really thought of myself in a role where I'm actively talking to people and selling like I'm doing now. But when I saw, from what I learned in the military to be more confident externally, and then from what I saw was out there in the, in the private sector, I said, that seems like something that I could do, that interests me, that could be fulfilling. And boy, it'd be great to do that, because there's all this equipment you need to operate in the military, critical things. Maybe I can be on the other side of it, if you will, and providing that to people. So, just that path led me there. All those steps, kind of at each step, what do I want to do? What path I want to take? And the biggest thing I'll say to somebody as far as joining the military and being in the military is, again, the people you're exposed to, the way you can push yourself into new things, and and just how it's really a meritocracy as well. I really do believe that, like, you get out of it what you put into it, and no matter what service you join or what you do initially, there's so many opportunities for you, and so many things you can kind of squeeze out of that experience and learn and contribute that take advantage of that, and it can give you many different potential paths in life.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And you said something earlier that really resonated. You mentioned that you gained the communication skills to kind of break out of your shell. I think, when you're in the military, I feel like you're forced to adapt to almost every situation that you're put in. Could you talk a little bit about the importance of communication skills and other transferable skills that you gained in the military, and how you feel like that kind of helped you in your career now?
Yeah, because I think in my case, you have to do things like briefing the crew before flight, afterwards. You got to do planning. So you got to talk to people in weather. You got to talk to the people that organize the cargo that goes in the back of the airplane, the people that keep your helmets and oxygen system going. And you have to be able to communicate with all these people to get a mission done. And you have a limited amount of time to communicate with these folks because you got to get something done. And you have to be clear in what you're communicating. Otherwise, the job won't happen. For any military mission or thing, there's hundreds of people that go into making it happen. And there's many different levels of communication you need to have with many of those folks. So, being able to confidently and clearly express yourself is something I learned, and that's very transferable, whether, you're in sales like I am, where you're trying to talk about the benefits a product brings and understand maybe an issue a customer's having and communicating internally to resolve it, that those skills of just being clear, succinct, and, I don't know if likable is the right word, but you have to be able to communicate where people want to listen to you and talk to you. So all those skills, they're just directly transferable into the civilian world, really, to any job, any role that you take.
Right. I totally agree. And Matt, when it comes to those transferable skills, how do you feel like your transition was impacted by the transferable skills that you gained while you were in the military?
Yeah, I think it definitely helped. Obviously, it
Oh,
wasn't so much that specifically I flew airplanes, because I didn't go into the airlines or anything like that, but it's like those overall skills that you build. I think what's important as well is for veterans who want to transition into the civilian world, it's how you present those skills, right? So let's just say you're in an infantry platoon in the Army, for example. Well, the transferable skill isn't necessarily that you learn to operate weapons and things like that. It's that you worked as a team. You're able to do that. You're able to work under high stress situations. So those are the things that are transferable. So really, there's so many things. All the things you do are ultimately transferable in terms of leadership, communication, ability to work under pressure, which I think the military you can do to a much greater extent. You just can't get that in the civilian world. So if those overall skill areas are things that are directly transferable. And it's important that you present those correctly so that, the companies you're talking to understand the benefit they bring. So you can't always assume companies understand that because you've been in the military. But if you explain it correctly, it's a huge benefit, and it's something no one else can, someone who wasn't in the military can offer.
right. And Mike, what do you think, when you were transitioning out in your transferable skills, like, how do you feel like, it impacted you?
I felt like Matt touched on a lot of things that like you say, they resonated with me when you were saying, is you're put in a situation where, and even though I was never actually in a combat scenario, everything you're doing on a ship when you're underway is training for a combat scenario. So yeah, like Matt, I tested as an introvert, and I was a shy person as well back in high school. But you're not allowed to do that when you're in that situation, because one of my jobs is, if a missile showed up, I have to let people know. And I actually have to make commands to let them know how to deal with the ship. Well, as a 19-year-old, you're thrust into this position, and you know that people rely on you. So even though you actually aren't in the scenario, you're training for it every day. So those skills will always carry over. They're going to build your confidence. They're going to help you forever. One of the other things that I was thinking about as Matt was talking, as far as another skill that, and it may be more Navy specific because you're on a ship with 250 other guys from all walks of life that have completely different ideas about how they want to live a life as compared to you do, but you all have to be harmonious and get along. And usually the best way to do is just make fun of each other. But you have to learn how to live with other people in that environment when in very close quarters. And I got to be honest, I can't say that I remember more than a fight on the ship. So it's about how it, once again, like Matt said, it's about the mission. It's always about the mission, and you build around that.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think in the Air Force, it is a little bit different. Although when you're with a crew on an airplane, you're with them 24/7, and you see people at their best, you see people at their worst. Everybody has to exercise some level of leadership on different ways. And I think in my case, I was in charge of the overall crew and mission, and so I had to be able to lead those folks, obviously. But each person is a specialist in their own right, and you have to learn to trust people because, I didn't know everything about tying down cargo in the back or setting things up to be put out the back of an airplane and parachute. So I had to rely on my load master to know that and be confident and back him or her up in doing those things. So it's this combination of leadership and teamwork that has to happen. And like Mike said, you're paired with people you never would have necessarily been paired with otherwise. And that's really good. And, it's not all sunshine and roses. Sometimes you're working with people that you don't necessarily quote unquote get along with, but you figure it out and you get the job done anyway. And I think that's, again, another skill to have that you don't necessarily get. That's maybe a little bit unique to the military, that aspect of, again, you're not just with these folks 9 to 5, you're with them at all times. And so you really get to know people on a very, very detailed level. And so I think that's really helpful. And it just makes them, it's one of the things I remember. I enjoyed flying in the military, but just the camaraderie. I think touch on it. You kind of make fun of each other a little bit, you do that, but you do it in the spirit of you really know each other. Like you become, in a way, brothers and sisters. And I think that's great. That's just a great part of the experience overall.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think, your experience has a lot to do with the role that you have at Acumentrics. I know that Acumentrics has a lot of military veteran employees and work with military veterans or the military specifically. So could you talk a little bit about Acumentrics, the UPS products, and how it impacts military applications?
I guess I'll jump in, and certainly Mike will have a lot to say also. So our systems are used in a very wide range of applications, but basically, if you were to think about them, they ensure good quality power is available for critical systems at all times. So an example, just as far as the way the products, what benefit they provide. So you can, a control station for a drone that's being flown on the other side of the world. Obviously, that can't be interrupted, right? If the systems don't work even for a second, the consequences can be huge. They can be disastrous at worst. And so our systems prevent that from happening and ensure things keep running regardless. And so that's a really tall order, right? That requires a product that's extremely robust, well-designed, well-built. And so our products are almost all built, here in the US. And all those things have to come together to deliver a capability that's really important. So, we're critical. so the person in that drone control station or on the ship, et cetera, may not know Acumentrics, but they're benefiting from it. We're playing a key role in helping them get their mission done. So that part's really satisfying in terms of that. And in commercial applications, which are some of the things I focus on, an example might be telemedicine kits. So telemedicine is becoming a big area now, certainly with COVID. And telemedicine includes delivering care to, say, remote areas of Africa or India and places like that. And to deliver that care, you're offering touch with somebody who's on the other side of the world, a specialist. Again, if that communication gets interrupted or cut off, it really affects the care of somebody. So similarly, it's mission critical, if you will. And again, the person using the kit may not know Acumetrics, but we're there helping out.
That's awesome. And so as far as the opportunities that are available, are they typically, would you say entry, mid, senior level if you were to kind of ballpark it?
I'd say, I'll just jump in here. I'd say really all throughout the company, there's different ways to enter. Certainly entry level, mid level, and some senior level. The company has a lot of opportunities, and the company's growing, so there's a lot of opportunities. To do the work. So really, there's opportunities at all levels.
That's awesome. Mike, did you want to touch on that a little bit about the mission of Acumentrics and what you do there?
Sure. Yeah, Matt pretty much touched it, but at a broader, I basically look at we tend to touch military applications. Most of the places that wars are fought don't have clean power, or they're in the middle of a battle and there's always the option of losing power. That's kind of what we've come into, where we make a durable product, easy to use, easy to service. Because the warfighter has 1,000 different products that they're working with, and it needs to be as easy for them to use as possible. So basically, anywhere there's a place where clean power is needed, that's where you're going to find Acumentrics. That's from the military side. I'm not going to touch the commercial side because Matt is the expert on that one. As far as positions throughout the company goes, I agree with Matt as well. There's all levels. We're hiring business development people to go after specific portions of the government and try and understand where their needs are so we can help more. That's pretty much all.
That's awesome. And I know we're jumping around a little bit, but I would like to jump back into your stories a little bit more, because I know that right now we're thinking about or speaking about kind of the finished product of Mike and Matt. Everything's cool now, but could you talk a little bit about the obstacles that you faced, and maybe one of those hardships where you learned something really critical about what you need to do when you're on the civilian side? This is for both of you, Mike or Matt. You can jump in there.
Sure, I guess I'll start it off. I'm going to go back to coming out of the military, having a plan, but executing the plan is a whole nother ballgame. So I basically, like I said, I wasn't prepared to be able to go to college. So I had to go to community college, and I was actually taking high school courses in community college. So what should have taken me 2 years took me 3, because I was so far behind. But at the same time, I think what I also learned is because now I had developed this work ethic where you've been put in different situations, and you've just learned to commit to what your goal was at a specific time, as you would with a mission in the military, that I had to take these stepping stones. I had to take these little steps and bite off one at a time until I could get closer to that goal. Because the other thing was, as you mentioned, GI Bill was huge. But at the same time, I paid for my school. So I worked 40 hours a week while I was going to school full time, because that's what I needed to do to get to where I needed to be. So I would say that was a big hurdle. I know, I in my experience also, I actually felt military helped me all the way around. And I know some people have had issues finding jobs coming out of the military. Fortunately for me, it's been a benefit where every scenario that I've been in has had high respect for the military, none more than Acumentrics, because they touch the military so much more than the other companies that I've been in. But I've actually felt like that's helped propel me through my career. As far as other hardships, you got a beautiful family, wife, 2 kids, been married 21 years. I'm a blessed man.
That's awesome. That's wonderful. Matt, what about you?
Yeah, so in terms of, so as far as, I guess, challenges, so coming out of the military and, going to grad school and looking for jobs, I think one of the challenges is, which I think I touched on before, is being able to explain what you learned in the military in a context that, civilian companies will understand. Again, we touched on leadership, ability to work under pressure, all those things. So that takes some learning. I think one of the things that helped me in terms of the military is what I learned in the military. So in pilot training, everybody hits bumps in the road. A certain number of people wash out and don't make it, and you try to learn from that and you press on. So, I think when I came out, when I was looking for jobs initially, I'd probably put, I don't know, 50, 80 resumes out there. And, a lot of times didn't hear anything back, but I had learned to just persist, not only persist, but also adjust and improve. Okay, so let me do this. Okay, A, I'm not going to get discouraged because I believe I can do this. And B, what am I learning through this process, and how can I adjust and, make my resume better, the way I approach interviews better, or get skills that I need to be better positioned. I think being able to do that, not intellectually, but in real time, in real life, is, in my case, something I learned because I was in the military. And, I think that was important. One thing I did want to touch on as well, because, you hear about veterans having trouble finding jobs and that happening. And I think it's partially because some of the factors that I mentioned about the civilian world not always understanding the benefits that are brought, or maybe having some stereotype of what a veteran is. A huge thing that I don't see enough of, and I didn't take enough advantage of, but I try to do now for people coming out, veterans will help other veterans. If a veteran contacts me looking for some kind of help of any kind, I'll always answer them. And I think that's true in general, is rely on and don't be afraid to seek out help from other veterans. It's so critical, and it sounds like a cliche, but I think it can be done more. I think that's something that, again, is really unique. You have that network, brother and sisterhood, if you will, that you can tap. And not tapping that can sometimes, can make things harder than they need to be in terms of transitioning into the civilian world.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like a lot of times in addition to what you mentioned about the challenges of why veterans have issues when it comes to getting new jobs, I feel like it's tough because we've kind of been focused on this one specific mission in one organization for typically at least 4 years to 6 years or more. And we have to kind of essentially transition and focus on the fact that, oh, wow, we have to focus on our benefits, our families, all of our expenses. Where am I actually going to live? I actually have a choice. Oh my gosh, I didn't know I would have a choice in this matter. And so I think those are all, key challenges that we face. And so, do you feel like Acumentrics has a different approach when it comes to essentially differentiating themselves in the market for being a company that really appreciates military veterans and working with the military in general? This is from.
I would say yes, and I'll go back to what I said prior. I mean, the whole company is basically formed around the warfighter and about keeping the warfighter safe. And And so that puts veterans and active duty first in their mind at any given point. So I think that trickles down into the hiring process, because if that's the company's culture and this is who they care about, bringing people from that culture into it only makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that you pretty much you hit it on the head. And I think it's awesome because it's obvious that the company culture within Acumentrics is awesome. I've met both of you and Jennifer. So I wanted to ask a little bit about, in this last portion of the interview, what advice would you give to other veterans that are in your position, or or essentially were in your position maybe a few years back? People that are thinking, oh man, I shouldn't get out because I don't know if I'll be able to make it. How am I going to make it? Like, what would you say to those types of people that are transitioning?
Well, not to be repetitive, but I think it's important is understand the value you bring. All the stuff we talked about already in terms of what you learned, working under pressure, leadership, followership, all those things are important. So, let's say, for example, you're in a artillery platoon or something in the Army or Marine Corps. Okay, so you may say, well, there's no artillery pieces in the civilian world that can operate, but that's not the point. The point is all those things you learned while you were there, all those other skills you gained. So realize that value. And again, I can't stress enough, other veterans will help you translate those things so that you can present it properly. Well, help you understand, hey, you do have a lot of value. You did do a lot of things. Understand that in yourself and help you translate that so you can communicate it to others. I think if you're a veteran, don't undersell yourself, if you will. You have a lot of unique skills and experience that you can bring to the table, and make sure you talk about that. Make sure you're able to explain it.
Yeah, and I think networking is a huge piece. I love the social media movement right now. LinkedIn is really an amazing resource. I think the Veteran Mentor Network is an amazing resource to really just post a question, and you literally can have hundreds of thousands of people taking a look at your questions and answering them. So I think you're exactly right about that. Just make sure you talk to people. And Mike, what are your thoughts about what you would say to someone that's transitioning, might be a little discouraged about that process?
Oh, I find it very interesting because you had brought up the portion of having a choice of where to live and so forth. And now that you bring that up, I can see that as being an issue when people come out is, what? Yeah, you have a mission, but you haven't always been the one planning your mission. You've been the one executing. So I think that's one of the important transition points is now you're the person that has to plan your mission. You're the one that has to know where you're going and set the plan and execute to it. To Matt's point, Matt nails it on the head. You come out and you're like, oh yeah, well, I don't need to shoot a gun in this job. Well, you don't need to shoot a gun. You've got critical decision-making skills now. You've learned all these different scenarios. You don't know what you don't know about yourself yet. You're gonna find out more as that transition goes. Just when you speak of your service, speak of it proudly because you have gained a lot, and understand that. And I really think those are the big scenarios. Those are the big picture things. And if you do that, I don't think there's much that's going to stop you as long as you plan and execute. Everything's planning and executing.
Yeah, everything is planning and executing. I love that. I always say that to myself as well, especially when you go through challenges. You always feel like the vision is going to be, oh my gosh, when I get out, I think there's two paradigms. It's either, all right, when I get out, I'm going to crush it. I'm just going to get this job. I'll be on, me, it was, I'll be on Wall Street. I'm just going to, then I was just thought to myself, wow, maybe I don't want to be on Wall Street. Maybe I want to do something else. And so, having these talks with my family, friends, and especially my parents. My parents wanted me to stay in the military. Like, what are you doing getting out? So these are some challenges that I feel like we all face. And so, as we wrap up, just wanted to get your initial thoughts, or your overall thoughts about you know if someone is interested in an opportunity with Acumentrics, how would they go about doing that, and should they reach out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll talk to any veteran. What we have available varies with time, but we're a growing company. Opportunities present themselves on a regular basis. So, I mean, certainly reach out to the company, because the company is very, as we've already said, very, open to veterans. But I'm willing to talk to anybody to help them present themselves in the right, proper way and take advantage of what they've learned, that sort of thing. So reach out to me. I can provide that info.
Yeah, no, like Matt says, if the veteran community is willing to help each other. So yeah, we're willing to help them if Acumentrics is a good fit. We're willing to help them if Acumentrics isn't a good fit. And as people that have gone through it and have some experience, we may be able to help guide them in a better direction. Absolutely.
Right. That sounds awesome. Yeah, I feel like stories like yours are just incredibly inspirational, because people can start to see the light and find themselves in your journeys that you shared. So, somebody could be having a dark time literally today as they watch this. So really appreciate your thoughts and your perspective as it pertains to the military veteran transition. It's not an easy one. So I really appreciate everything that you shared today. And before we jump, is there anything else that you might want to share with the audience?
I'm all set. Thank you.
Thanks, Robert. It was a great opportunity. Appreciate it.